Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to talk about not recasts, but shall we say reimaginings of some of Games Workshop's more easily identifiable products. So I'm thinking of companies like Wargame Exclusive, a very good example. A few of the things that RTLW has done to an extent. Companies like Anvil Industries, although they're more third-party parts than entire models. I think Raging Heroes in a way kind of falls into a similar category. They do definite Sisters of Battle style miniatures, which admittedly have a different visual flair, shall we put it? Massively over-sexualized is basically the easy way to say it, to Games Workshop, but there are similarities between what a lot of these companies do and with what Games Workshop does, to the extent, especially in the case of Wargame Exclusive, where you can full on just look at a model and go, oh, that is Lucius, or oh, that is a Abaddon the Despoiler model. Not massively subtle. There's also, I think, was it Kabuki Miniatures as well, does like a range of they're not the Primarchs honest. They sort of look like them. They're like Lion Knight and what's the other one? Like Reptile Lord and stuff. They look very much like what you'd expect the Primarchs to look like, but they're not actually the Primarchs. Obviously, they can't do that because Games Workshop is the Primarchs. That style of thing. What I'll do is I'll put some pictures in the background just so you can see vaguely what I'm talking about. Also, I apologise now. I've got a pretty bad cough and cold, but I'm soldiering on because I'm bored of not doing anything. Those miniatures, that style of production, that kind of taking inspiration from Games Workshop's aesthetic, shall we say, and replicating it to some extent, it's always been an interesting thing to me, and I've started to buy more stuff from places like that. I've got quite a few Wargame exclusive things now. Mostly, to be honest, regardless of whether you want to say they're ripping off Games Workshop or not, I've found that the actual miniatures tend to be really high quality. Like, the sculpts are really good, the casts are really, really good. They are resin, which is not my preferred material, but they generally haven't required really anything in the way of cleanup. They've been very nicely produced models. And every time I go to one of these sites and see a new release that is like quite clearly a version of something that Games Workshop doesn't provide a version of, or has, not updated for a while, there's a little part of me that thinks to myself, okay, I like this. I'm not sure I'd necessarily buy it because I wouldn't use, for instance, like an Abaddon the Despoiler. I wouldn't use that model because it's not relevant to anything that I'm doing. But I like the model. Is there really enough business? Are there enough people who are sitting there who desperately want to buy this to make it worth the process of sculpting and designing and all of this stuff? And you could say, well, the answer obviously is yes. If they're selling it, then there must be some interest in it. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that, in that it's a kind of, when I say opportunistic, it sounds negative, but it's not really. What especially Wargame Exclusive seem to do is essentially react to the fact that Games Workshop aren't reacting. So there are models within the Games Workshop range which are horrendously outdated. They're really old, they're not great anymore. Good examples, of course, being Abaddon the Despoiler, old Lucius of the Emperor's Children. He does not look great anymore. There's a number of examples that they just don't look great. There's also other models where, they're newer models, but there isn't a variety amongst those models. A good example being the Tech Priest for the Adeptus Mechanicus. Great model, I really like the Tech Priest, but unless you're going to go massive, kit bash extreme, you're going to be hard pressed to make yours look unique, which, to be honest, I think is a massive shame for the Tech Priest. I mean, AdMech Tech Priests are, to my mind, not all unique, but they don't all upgrade themselves in the same way. They're not all going to have the same kind of silhouette, the same appearance. There's going to be things different, stuff that varies from one Tech Priest to the other, having just them all look the same is kind of a waste. And that is where, especially Wargame Exclusive in that situation, kind of stepped up and went, okay, there is no female version of a Tech Priest. We've made that. Admittedly, you can buy one without a top on, which is not personally what I'd go for, but there is also a fully clothed armoured one as well. It's essentially a reaction to Games Workshop not providing people with things that they want, is what it boils down to. Something that I found really interesting was when the Sisters of Battle got their kind of update, where Games Workshop was like, okay, we're actually making Sisters of Battle. Here we go, 2019. They're going to be here. Wargame Exclusive has now got Sisters of Battle. You can buy Sisters of Battle from them. Of course, they're not exactly the same as Games Workshop Sisters of Battle. They can't be. But they are very, very similar. And that's all it boils down to. Things like Raging Heroes, there is a model that, frankly, makes a very good Keeper of Secrets. Why would you have that? Well, that's because Games Workshop haven't done any Keeper of Secrets for absolutely ages. It's all stuff that Games Workshop aren't necessarily like dropping the ball on. They're not like missing the boat, so to speak, because when they eventually do get around to updating these models, when they do get around to actually making new versions of this stuff, people will obviously still buy it. But in the meantime, you've got these kind of this multitude of other companies who don't really have, they have their own style, but their own style is a kind of an evolution of Games Workshop style, because they are essentially providing you with things that Games Workshop don't. So there will be, you know, a new Abaddon the Despoiler at some point, but to be honest, there's a pretty good one at Wargame Exclusive right now. There will no doubt be some more Slanesh stuff eventually, but right now Raging Heroes does a very Slanesh line that you could quite easily take some stuff from. Artel W to me feels a bit closer to a collector thing than a kind of army building thing, but if you want things like Inquisitors or Commissars or kind of Imperial official style models, they do some really good ones because, well, guess what? Games Workshop don't make them. And it's a kind of point of genuine fascination where there is almost a sub-industry of people just making the things that Games Workshop, for whatever reason, aren't making. There are smaller companies who are able to make enough to make it worth doing, like an okay amount, I'm guessing, to be able to keep producing new models and keep up manufacturing and keep like creating new designs. They've sprung up in the shadow of something much bigger, but making something that much bigger company just doesn't seem to have got round to making yet. Like, you can get Obliterators from Wargame Exclusive, you can get female Necron models. Don't really know what the kind of lore standpoint of that would be. Does it really matter? Regardless, if you want them, they're there. As I say, like different versions of Abaddon and Lucius. It's something where every time I see it and every time I go to these sites and I look at this stuff and quite often end up buying some of it, part of me goes, why have Games Workshop not done anything about this? Why is the best option for the leader of the Black Legion, the War Master himself, why is the best option in terms of models for him to go to a company that is not Games Workshop and to purchase it from them? Why is the best option, I mean, to be honest, why is the best option for Lehman Russ not from Forge World? Because the Forge World Lehman Russ has got like a really weird angle. I don't like the pose on that model at all. The model itself, like, the characterization's fine. The pose is just like, it's mental. He's like twisted all the way around. It looks really off. I don't understand it at all. There is a genuinely better version of that available on another website. Things like the Orcs as well. I mean, RTLW did a really good Orc model that is a better war boss than you could get from Games Workshop at this point. In fact, I'm just thinking about it, I don't think you can get a non-mega armoured war boss from Games Workshop at the moment, can you? Can you even get an armoured war boss from Games Workshop? I should check that, but you get what I'm saying. there's an entire industry that's sprung up essentially around the fact that Games Workshop lets things sit for too long. Around the fact that Games Workshop at some point left whole lines and important characters to just sit there untouched. And as a result, you can now go to places other than Games Workshop to find better miniatures than Games Workshop provides for Games Workshop's own characters. Now, you can sit there and go, well, is this like legal? Is it moral? Is it ethical? Is it something that should be done? That is a question that, frankly, is an entire different video. But it does, I think, hammer home a fairly almost disappointing point, which is that Games Workshop have somehow allowed some of their most iconic, recognisable, interesting characters and units, for that matter, they've just left them to collect dust and grow old whilst entire ranges are overhauled or invented completely, like in the case of the Custodes and the Primaris and like the Death Guard, the Thousand Sons. These were things that they had conversion packs. Like the Thousand Sons was essentially an entire faction. That you could buy extra bits for your Chaos Space Marine squad to make them Thousand Sons, but that is a faction that was almost built from scratch. The Death Guard, yeah, you were able to get Plague Marines, but that was it. You were able to get Plague Marines. The rest of that army came from nowhere. Same with Primaris. Same with the Custodes. Same with Imperial Knights. There are just massive chunks of Games Workshop's character line of their units that are so outdated and so desired but not served by them that other companies are now easily, quickly and reliably creating better alternatives that quite often turn out to be cheaper. I don't think that's necessarily good news for Games Workshop. I don't think it's going to cause like a massive dent in their profits, but it does show that perhaps updating the old as opposed to just throwing out new stuff all the time might be something that needs rethinking. Because I don't want to go to another site to get the perfect model for an established Games Workshop character. I should just be able to get that from Games Workshop. And yet, if I want to get a new Lucius, I'm not going to be getting it from Games Workshop. I'm going to be getting it from Wargame Exclusive, who have made an entire little industry of their own, basically copying Games Workshop stuff. It's just a weird thing to happen and a weird way round for that to go, for that to even be possible. I feel like this is almost a get your shit together Games Workshop thing, but I don't think it is. I think it's more just a realisation of a slight disappointment that there's all this great stuff that Games Workshop aren't touching, and they probably should. Anyway, do you use any of those websites? Do you get models from there? Do you use some stand-ins for stuff that Games Workshop doesn't make, or older Games Workshop models that you don't feel live up to the standard that they should now? Let me know in the comments down below which ones you've bought, because it'd be interesting to see how many other people go to these places. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. There's the usual array of things to click on the screen. There's Patreon, subscribe, videos, all that shit. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.